I think you stepped over a line, and that's some trust lost. So just to blatantly support the police department, how are we going to be able to support police accountability when we're not able to look at that critically? So in regards to the body-worn cameras, I suggest we just hold this recommendation. We need much more discussion on this issue.
Okay, we're at 3 minutes now, so you got to wrap it up.
Okay, and then just my last comment regarding the $2 million investment. We really need to be clear about where that funding is going. Really, I don't feel confident with any of these recommendations stated as they are at this current point, and I recommend that we hold them all. Thank you.
In the interest of saving time, I'd like to say that I would associate myself with the two previous speakers. I think these are really serious questions that are in front of us. But the thing that really hit my heart, and it hit it very badly, is that, Sam, I love you dearly, but you're starting to sound like a lobbyist. And when you bring lobbying to this entire committee, I think you do damage. I'd like you to think about the fact that when you bring millions of dollars worth of requests for the police, you need to remember that council has cut our parks. And the best thing for our youth is to have some parks and recreation. So I'd really like all of you to rethink when you're going to present money issues to us. You do it in writing, and all the endorsers need to put their names on it so that we can get back to everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Go ahead, Dan.
So I'm still Dan Hamilton with Portland Cop Watch, and I think compared to the other recommendations, these don't seem to be very deeply thought out. There's no backing material for any of it. The COAB used to have to have a whole packet of information to support their recommendations, and I know you don't want to hear about your old boyfriend, your old girlfriend, and how the other people used to do it, but I think that was very useful. That one of the best things they did was the recommendations, and so there should be more substance behind these. They're all one sentence long. The thing I'm passing around is Portland Cop Watch's position paper on body cameras, which we talked about at a couple of your meetings already, but we are officially neutral on it, but we have a lot of concerns. We have people in the cop watching movement who repeatedly say the best vantage point to report the police officer is from a third-party position where a cop watcher would be, rather than out from the chest of the officer, where you're not seeing what the officer is doing. So that's one of the key problems with it. There's also supposed to be a policy work group to talk about what the policies are going to be. We were invited to be on, and then got suspended in April, so I don't know. And one of the things that came up is they're going to talk to the police association before they talk to community members, which is problematic, again. One of the reasons there's not a Latinx roundtable for the police is that after Jose Mejia was killed in 2001, they disbanded because they didn't trust the police because of the way they handled that whole case. For people who don't know, that was 18 years ago. He was a indigenous farm worker from Mexico. He was killed in a mental health hospital and by Portland police. And so there's some stark pains here. We talked about the truth and reconciliation that has to happen before we can move forward with a lot of this stuff, and I think that's a key issue, and you talk to a lot of people in the Latinx community before you make that recommendation. The Bureau already has the biggest budget in the city. Everybody wants more money. Portland Cop Watch operates on $6,000 a year. Imagine what we could do with $2 million. So it was already pointed out that parks lost a lot of money. I don't think that's an appropriate thing. If you want to say something, you can say you can move resources from other stuff in the Bureau and support these programs. But again, you haven't had any presentation from youth violence prevention people, and you've had presentations from other folks. So I don't understand why that's on your agenda yet, if you haven't had that presentation. And in terms of the process, I didn't see these recommendations until this morning because I realized we didn't get the agenda sent out to us by the staff. So I looked at it this morning. The fact that you're saying that recommendations we made from the microphone have to go back to the committee, I don't have time to go to the committee meetings. I spend a lot of time on this stuff. So I'm hoping that you'll considering making amendments and adding reasonable recommendations to the ones that you're already making tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. There is no in the bylaws process for making the recommendations, but we are cognizant that, everybody can't make all the meetings, and we will continue to look for ways to make sure you don't have to come to a meeting to make a recommendation. You can email it to us, we can pick it up and kind of go from there. Thank you.
Mike Blue here, filming the police Portland. I'm one of those people out there in the street filming the police from the outside in. Okay, sharing some history, my personal history with you guys. I spent 15 years of my life homeless. So you were talking about body cameras earlier. Okay, here's the thing about body cameras. Half of the people that are arrested by Portland Police Bureau are homeless, people experiencing systemic homelessness. They don't have the money to have access to the footage. And what I mean by that is the amount of money that Portland Police Bureau charges for records, any kind of record, is exorbitant. Dealing with these policies of body cameras, it has to be made cheap enough for the people that are being scrutinized by these cameras to have access to it. That's my biggest issue. My second biggest issue is you can talk all you want and people can say that there's going to be community engagement about the policies of body cameras, but that's BS. When I've looked at how body camera policy is enacted around the country, the police union associations do it, the police do it, and the mayor's office do it. I mean, that's how this works. The animus for body cameras on the police is because of all the police murder. People want the police scrutinized by body cameras. All these policies that are enacted when body cameras are brought into cities is all about giving police better charging instruments, better ability to review the footage before they write their report so they can use that information to charge people and put more people in the system and cause more oppression and more tyranny. That's not what body cameras are for. They're about keeping police accountable, not giving them better access and better tools to prosecute people. Okay, it's just ridiculous, and it's disheartening to see that and feel it. And also, you guys talked. I'm trying to be brief here. Also, you guys talked a lot about community engagement, like after the fact. Like how the police deal with propaganda, basically trying to make themselves look better after they murder people. A better way to do community outreach is to stop murdering people, stop these extrajudicial killings by police. Andre Gladden, a blind man, was shot and killed by Portland Police Bureau, and then before they found out he was blind, the officer, I believe, took his knife off of his vest and dropped it on his body and started a cover-up. Then the DA's office, for the grand jury to try to indict the police officer, they brought a developmentally disabled relative of Gladden in there, and that's the only person they had as a witness, that they could get information for at the grand jury. And guess what? The police investigated themselves and found that there was no fault. Okay, if you want there to be more positive view from the public of the police, stop murdering people. And that's all I have to say. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for sharing.
I'll let Bob step on that way.
My name is Bob with From the Police, and I believe that there should be body cameras, but I don't think that the police should be the ones that decide that they're going to be the ones that edit them. It should be an individual body that is not assigned by the police or the mayor, elected, whatever, but it needs to be a separate body from the police and the mayor's office. Okay? And two, I wanted to bring up about the gang enforcement. The gang enforcement is extremely racist. I don't know if you noticed or not, most of the people they go after is black. I mean, they got, what, 20-something gang units that go after the black and Hispanic gangs, but they got one that goes after the white supremacist gangs. I still ain't figured that one out. So gangs like Brew, EK, and all that has one gang, one officer, but gangs like the Crips, the Bloods, Southsiders, Norteños, Bulldogs, they got 21 officers. That is racist to me. How can you have this group over here have 21 officers and this group over here only have one officer? It doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, it may make sense to you guys. definitely makes sense to the Portland Police over here, but it doesn't make sense to me. Okay? I'm hearing, oh yeah, let's put more advocates out there. Let's pay for more advocates. Okay, advocates are gang dropouts. They're the one, they sit there for years, they supported their gangs like brothers and sisters. Then all of a sudden something happens, they do something wrong or something. They don't want to take a punishment, so they drop out and they go to the police. The police go, yeah, you can be an advocate. Do I trust someone that has my back, that's willing to die for me, that turns his back on me? Am I supposed to trust that person? The police say, yeah, you're supposed to trust that person. Because once they're a dropout, they're no longer a gang member. They're a part of society. You know, they're a positive part of society. A gang member is a gang member. I don't care what category you put them in. Someone that sits there and shoots my brother, if a gang member shoots my brother, right, and then drops out and becomes a positive part of society because he's working with the police, does that mean that how am I supposed to feel better because he's now a positive part of society? He should be in prison just like the gang members. And that's what I have to say. I mean, think about the gang members. Think about Andre Gladden, the blind man that was shot by Portland police, where an officer just dropped his knife. That's ridiculous. And people accept that because that's what the Portland police put out. Portland police put that out. So they say, hey, okay, we made a little error, we'll erase this, and this is now the whole truth. But the truth is, he was black, he was blind, and they thought he was homeless. Okay? Those are 3 categories that'll get you killed every time dealing with the police.
Okay, we're at your 2 minutes, thank you. And we did hear from Andre Gladden's family at the, I think you mentioned it, Patrick, at the mental health subcommittee. It was a very productive conversation, and we obviously do care a lot about that in the mental health community.
Good evening, my name is Mariana Gary Smith. I'm a community member. If you heard the last name, you know who I am. Don't act like you don't know. If you don't know, I'm Sharon's daughter, just for clarity. But I'm speaking for myself, not my mom. What I wanted to address are several things. First off, the conversation around the use of funds regarding life coaches. I wanted to sort of highlight Lakeisha Dumas' comment around lived experience, and I want to encourage people to consider what lived experience or evidence lived versus evidence-based is, and to maybe get a bit more background and understanding how folks with lived experience can actually enhance the process that you all are in right now, to be really considerate of community members who have lived experience, who have an understanding of what happens within these systems that we're working in, because we're talking about systematic oppression that have built up over time, that have compounded the relationships that people have with the police department in particular. I don't have a lot of experience with police, but I'm very wary of them, simply because I'm black and I'm a female and I'm in Portland. And that is the reality of how I live my life every day. And I'm privileged, I'm educated, I have a job, I'm not homeless, all of these things, right? And yet, and still I know when I walk out my door, I have a greater chance of being shot, pulled over, profiled, etc. So I need folks to be really clear about the privilege that you have when you sit in these spaces and when you're talking about folks who aren't present. So I want to encourage that conversation first. Secondly, I want to ask folks to consider, if you're talking about how you want to use these funds when there hasn't been even a skeletal outline of how these funds are going to be used, what does it look like to have a conversation when there's nothing to talk about? So you're sort of like spinning in space. And unfortunately, what happens in political circles or places like this, and I convene a lot of these kind of meetings for my job, so I know what I'm talking about, is that you get into using language and jargon that isn't reference or even look back at the community you're talking about. So we can be really clear about the language that you're using and who you're talking to. And if you're not having these meetings in community spaces, not that this isn't a community space, but as far as the folks who are out here talking, the people you're talking about, there aren't a lot of representation out here. So you need to consider who you're talking to and where you're doing the talking, and how you can engage folks as part of developing that scope when you're talking about millions of dollars. I also encourage people to consider utilizing other folks who are currently doing this work in smaller organizations or community-based organizations as part of a partnership, if you have these funds, to be able to utilize folks who are already doing the work and stop recreating a wheel that's already proven itself to be rutted and broken. We actually need to do something different. I also want to encourage people to understand the use of data. You're using data and points of information which are necessary, but how have these points been validated or defined by the communities you're speaking about? So again, this is looking at the ethical use of data as it relates to historically marginalized populations. I also want to encourage, I heard the word minority used in reference to communities of color. I really need to reflect this as a person of color. Minority is a disrespectful term. When you're talking about communities of color or folks of color, you simply need to call out who you're talking about. So say Black, say African American, say African, say Native, Indigenous, say Mexican, say whoever, but the use of the term minority is disrespectful, especially if you don't identify or